We start with a recap of what we did last time. So we introduced the geometrical definition of conformal transformations. So a conformal, so this is a definition. So conformal transformations are coordinate transformations under which angle between two curves is preserved. So so what that means is that let's suppose we look at let's take a Euclidean. So we looked at two different cases, and throughout the course we will take look at both these cases, Euclidean space-time and Lorentzian space-time. So if you look at Euclidean space-time, then suppose you have one coordinate system, one coordinate chart, let's say we call it the x coordinate chart, and in this chart there are two curves. This is curve 1 and this is curve 2, and at this point these two curves are intersecting, and these are the tangent vectors. We call it t1 and t2, and they make an angle alpha. Now we make a coordinate transformation to x prime, uh, and in this curve, of course, the new curves will change. So this point where they intersected, this was x, let's say xp, and in this new chart x prime, this is x prime p. And so then the tangent vectors will now be called t1 prime, and you can call this t2 prime. But we are looking at those transformations x to x prime such that this angle is the same. The angle is the same. So so we can parameterize the angle as follows: that cos of alpha is t1 dot t2 over mod t1 times mod t2. T1, t2 are the tangent vectors. Okay. So this angle should be the same, which means that t1 dot t2 should be the same as t1 dot prime, t1 prime dot t2 prime over mod t1 prime times mod t2 prime. This is the condition we demand. And that means, so now since it's a vector, I can write this t1 I, ith component, so t1 I prime as in this under this transformation it's a vector, so it will transform like this, let's say dxa ta, and similarly for t2 prime, and this del x prime, this is evaluated at xp because the tangent vectors is at xp, so we can write it like this. And similarly, now here the dimension of the space is not important, so dimension I'll just take it to be d. It is not necessary that it is 3 dimension, but it can be any dimension d. And therefore t1 dot t2 dot t2 is actually t1i t2j delta ij. If it's a Euclidean metric, then it is this. So then this above condition, let's call it 1. So this above condition can be rewritten as del x I prime del xa times del xj prime del xb ta1 t2b delta ij divided by square root of del x uh, m prime del x c del x n prime del x d t1 c t1 d delta mn times other square root, which is del x k prime del x, let's say g del x l prime del x h t2g t2h delta kl. And so this has to be equal to t1 what do you call it? I'll just call it a, but it doesn't, it's just a dummy variable, t1a t2b delta ab over square root of t1 mod, that means square root of sorry t1 mod, which means square root of t1c t1d delta cd times t2e t2f delta ef. So this is the condition we want, that the cos alpha has to be the same in both the charts. Now because we want this, it is actually, if you think about it a bit, it is clear that the solution to this has to be of this form, because has to be the following form, that del x prime a mu I del x a times del x prime j del x b delta ij has to be equal to some function, some any arbitrary function of x times delta ab. So solution is this. Why is this the solution? I'll just try to argue a bit that, you see, the numerator and the denominator terms have to cancel, so that the full expression is the same, right? So what has to happen is that t1 prime, the transformation from the numerator and the transformation from the denominator have to cancel, so that cos alpha is the same. Now how can that happen? Now that can only happen if this whole expression is just some function times delta ab, so that this function, this inside the square root, you'll pick up 2 square root of f, and numerator there will be a single square root, a single f, and they will cancel. And I hope this is clear, that why this has to be the solution to this equation, because the numerator has to be t1a t2b delta ab, so it has to be some function times delta ab, so that, and the function can cancel from the numerator and the denominator. If it's not clear, then you can ask me but this should be the solution, where f of x is any function of x. So since we are evaluating at xp, so that means this f of x will be f of xp actually. So in our case, if you are evaluating this at xp, if this point is xp, so then this will be xp. It depends on which point you are evaluating it. Okay. So therefore, this transformation, so x to x prime as a function of x, such that the corresponding transformation matrix del x prime I del x a del x prime j del x b delta ij equal to some local function. So we will call this a local scale factor. So why we call it a local scale factor, I'll come to it in a minute. Times f of x delta ab. So these transformations, all x primes are called conformal transformations. So all transformations such that this are called conformal transformations. And this is of course in Euclidean space. This is in Euclidean space. This is in Euclidean space, but generalization to Minkowski space is easy. Follows, and the generalization is just simply just replace the delta ab by eta mu nu. So these are conformal transformation. This is the definition of conformal transformation.
স্যার এই
Yeah.
আমরা যদি এই মিনকস্কি থেকে আবার যদি কোনো আরবিট্রারি স্পেস টাইমে বস্তুটাকে জেনারেলাইজ করতে চাই, তাহলে কি লেফট হ্যান্ড সাইডে ইটা মিউ নিউ যেটা আছে
So you can generalize it to GAB, and then you can see whether it can be generalized to GAB. That will be in arbitrary metric. It will be GAB.
অ্যাকচুয়ালি ওই জিএবিটা কি ইনভেরিয়েন্ট মেট্রিক হবে? আই মিন যেমন ইটা মিউ
No,
নিউটা
it is not invariant. So it is transforming by f of x.
ইয়া আমি বলছি মানে যদি জেনারেল কেসে ইজ ইট জি প্রাইম মিউ নিউ অর সামথিং?
No, this is the definition. It will be so for any metric, if there are conformal killing vectors, then the definition is that it should become f of x times g alpha beta, the same metric.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a definition for conformal. Okay. Yeah. So then we also discussed that this definition for conformal transformations, and then we looked at this equation a little bit more. So for one thing, if we want further to so before that, so we called it a local scale factor. Why did we call that a local scale factor? So for instance, one thing we can see examples of solutions. So let's look at the solutions to this equation. So let's call this 2. So solutions to 2. So solutions to 2, one of course we already know. The first solution is if f is equal to 1 and del x prime mu del x alpha is just the Lorentz metric, Lorentz transformation. That means so this is a Lorentz transformation. That means if f is equal to 1, then this equation just the Lorentz, just that the eta mu nu is invariant. So then the solution to that is x prime mu is just a Lorentz, the transformation is a Lorentz transformation. And then in this case we can integrate this out because these lambdas are constant, and then you can write this x prime mu as lambda mu, this L is this L here means Lorentz transformation, lambda mu L alpha x nu plus b mu. So this is a translation, and these are Lorentz transformations. So this is one example. Second example is if you take f of x to be a constant not equal to 1. So let's lambda let's say greater than 1. Okay. Then this can happen if x prime mu is just lambda x mu plus b mu. Again, this lambda is this let's call it lambda square. So this is lambda b mu, and this is constant. Both of these are constants. Then we know that del x prime mu del x alpha del x prime mu del x beta eta mu nu is just given by lambda square eta alpha beta, because this object would be just lambda times delta mu alpha, and this will be lambda times delta nu beta times eta mu nu. So this will be lambda square eta alpha beta. Okay. So these are two examples. We will see some more. So what is the most general solution to this? So for that, first let me say something, that if we demand, or if we want, which is a physical demand actually, that under this transformation, under these conformal transformations, causal structures, causal relation between events should be preserved. What does that mean? So that means that is space-like events go to space-like events, and time-like events go to time-like events. That means what that means is that the sign of dx, so we want the sign, the dx square, dx mu, dx nu, eta mu nu, the sign should be the same. The relative signs should be the same. But that means that when you go to dx prime mu, dx prime nu, eta mu nu, if the sign has to be the same, then f of x has to be greater than 0. This implies that f of x has to be greater. So if f of x is greater than 0, then space-like events will go to space-like events, time-like events will go to time-like events. So we will further demand that f of x is greater than 0, so that the causal relation between events are preserved. So in that case, you see what we can then write this equation that we had, the del x prime alpha, del x prime mu, del x alpha, del x prime nu, del x beta, eta mu nu equal to f of x, eta alpha beta. We can write this as 1 by root fx del x prime mu del x alpha, 1 by root fx del x prime nu del x beta, eta mu nu equal to eta alpha beta, right? And then the question, and then of course we know what is this. So the solution to this is, if this is this is Lorentz transformation. Right. So therefore the general solution to this is that of course now this will be a function of x, because this is a function. So the general solution to this will be del x prime mu del x alpha has to be lambda L, function of x alpha, times a local function f of x. So it's a Lorentz transformation times a local scaling. It's called local scaling because here, if we had, instead of here we see this lambda coming. This lambda is the scaling, means that you have scaled every coordinate by a factor lambda. And then your metric is scaling by lambda square. But here it is f of x in general, which means it's a function. So that's why it's called local scale factor. Okay.
Sir, can you repeat why it is called local scale factor?
Well, no. So if f was a constant, then this is, if it's a constant, then we saw that this comes from scaling all the coordinates by a factor lambda. If f was lambda square, then this transformation can come by scaling every coordinate by lambda, by a scale factor lambda. It's a constant scale factor, right? So now you have, instead of constant lambda, you have f of x. So it means that every point of x, the scale factor, the length of the factor has changed. Yeah. So that's why. So it's a function of x. So that's why we call it local scale factor.
Sir, why we are calling it a general solution?
General solution because that is what you get here, right? Because if you divide by root f, then we know the solution to this. This is the Lorentz transformation. This is by definition Lorentz transformations. Because if I call this as lambda L, right? If this was your lambda L, then this is a Lorentz factor times square root of fx. Because this is the solution. If you call this lambda mu alpha, right? So then this is lambda mu alpha. So then this equation becomes lambda mu alpha, lambda nu beta, eta mu nu equal to eta alpha beta. But this is by definition this is how you define Lorentz matrices. So this is a Lorentz matrix. So the general solution is this. So once you write it down like this, then we know the solution. There's the Lorentz transformation. So the general solution is as a Lorentz transformation, but it's a local, meaning the Lorentz transformation can change at every point times root fx. Right. What I'm saying is that if you divide by 1 by root fx, and if you call this lambda mu L, then I know the solution to this is a Lorentz transformation matrix. Because by definition, Lorentz transformation matrix is this matrix: lambda mu nu, lambda mu alpha, lambda nu beta, eta mu nu equal to eta alpha. This is the definition for Lorentz transformation. So that in that sense, this is a Lorentz matrix. And so the solution is a local Lorentz factor times a local scale factor. Okay. But of course, this is not the full solution, because we have to integrate this. We have to see that when this equation can be integrated, because we want an solution, we want a transformation. This is just a derivative. We want to know when can you integrate this and find this thing. When can you integrate this and find out x prime as a function of x?
So, are we taking fx to be positive, definite, and invertible?
Yeah, so I'll come to that. Yes. So yeah, so okay. So let's come to that thing before we get to x prime mu. So now these transformations, so what we call conformal transformations, they will form a group. They'll form a group. So this set will form a group. How will it form a group? Because first of all, suppose you do one transformation x to x prime, and then you do another so firstly, the identity element exists. How does it form a group? A set of transformations form a group. If one identity transformation is a part of the transformation, is a part of the set of transformations. Two, inverse for each transformation exists. And three, the product of two transformations is also a transformation. Product of two transformations, also a transformation. So let's see if this is correct. So firstly, identity is a transformation, because identity just means that you take x prime mu equal to x mu, right? So if you take this transformation, then for this f is equal to 1, right? And then this obviously satisfies that equation. This obviously satisfies, because this just means that eta mu nu will go to eta mu nu. So this is obviously a transformation. Secondly, so we are looking for invertible transformation. So we are looking for transformations which are x. So if I take if I do a transformation x to x prime, okay, I want it to be invertible also. So I want a transformation which is invertible, which meaning I should also be able to do x prime to x, x prime to x. Okay. Now, is this a solution? It is a solution, because the inverse of a transformation del x prime del x mu, if I go from x prime mu x mu to x prime alpha, let's say, then the corresponding matrix is del x prime mu del x alpha. Let's say x. So let's say you're going from x alpha to x prime mu. Then the corresponding matrix x is this quantity, right? So then the inverse of that is just this del x alpha del x mu. This is the inverse matrix, right? If you go from x prime to x, you will get this. This is the inverse matrix. So we have to see whether this also satisfies that equation. So the equation was this: del x prime mu del x alpha del x prime mu del x beta eta mu nu equal to eta alpha beta. So you just multiply this by del x alpha del x prime, let's say lambda, and del x beta del x prime rho. Multiply both sides, del x alpha del x prime lambda del x beta del x prime rho, and then you see this is a delta. This is just Kronecker delta mu lambda, and this one will be delta nu rho, right? So therefore you will just get here lambda rho equal to eta alpha beta del x alpha del x prime lambda del x beta del x prime this thing. So here now, so now of course there was a f of x. So now you can, if you divide this by f of x this way, you get this equation. So therefore the inverse transformation will have f for f inverse is the new f. It's also a conformal. So this is also a conformal transformation where the new f is 1 by f. So as long as f of x is not 0, okay, this can be this can 1 by f of x is
So please go a little bit slow.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So so the first statement is that the identity matrix, identity transformation is a conformal transformation, because identity transformation f is equal to 1. Okay, and if identity transformation means you do nothing, so x prime mu is equal to x mu. So in that case, if you just substitute this is the equation that you have to check. If you just substitute x prime mu equal to x mu, then you will get eta mu nu equal to eta mu nu, and f will be 1. So that is automatically satisfying this equation for f equal to 1, right? The second thing is that to prove that the inverse exists. So suppose x to x prime. So what we have to show then is that if you do the inverse transformation from x prime to x, then that also is a conformal transformation, right? And how do you prove that? So you just multiply this equation by the inverse. So the inverse of this means that you have to multiply by del x alpha, del x prime nu, or del x prime lambda. Okay, then this will become delta lambda mu. Similarly, you multiply this by del x beta, del x prime rho, then this will also become delta rho nu. And you multiply both sides. So this side, what happens is that this side will become identity. That is what I wrote here. So that is what I did here. So this side now becomes identity. So here, because of this delta mu rho and delta mu lambda, this becomes eta lambda rho. And then you can just put this f of x back here, right? And now look at this equation. This is exactly like the conformal transformation equation. Okay, but with f being 1 by f. So as long as f is not 0, and in any case we won't demand f equal to 0, because we want to preserve the causal relation. So if f is 0, then it becomes light. So we don't want that to happen. So f is not 0. So if f is not 0, then this thing, then you see here that that this is also a conformal transformation. Is it okay?
স্যার স্লাইডটা একটু নামান, উপরের লাইনটা দেখতে পাচ্ছি, একবার নামান স্যার। बस ठीक है हाँ सर ओके ठीक है।
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
So fx cannot be greater than less than 0, right?
No, if you demand that the causal structure has to be preserved, then fx it cannot be less than 0.
Yeah, and in the first point you said even the space-like events, causality and the space-like.
No, so what I'm saying is that the causal relation, if two events are space-like separated, and if you demand that under this transformation they will remain space-like separated, then you have to take f to be positive so that the sign does not change.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But if you don't want that, then you can take f to be negative also. But this is a physical thing to demand, so we will demand it. So Bidishar, is it okay? I mean, is it slow enough or?
It's okay.
Okay.
So this is okay now.
Okay, so this is inverse, and then it is also clear that if you do two transformations, x to x prime and then x prime to x double prime, and this is also a conformal. This you can easily check. This is also a conformal transformation. Right? Because you just have to multiply it twice by this factor. This is, you have to multiply it once, x to x1, and then again to one more times from x1 to x2. And if you do that, this since is a matrix multiplication, so okay, let's do it then. So let's take, you do one transformation from x to x prime. let's okay, and then let's say there's a corresponding factor which is f prime. So that means del x prime mu del x alpha times del x prime nu del x beta eta mu nu is equal to f prime times eta alpha beta. So this is transformation 1. Now let's say you do another transformation which is from x prime to x double prime. So x prime to x double prime. So then this transformation can be written, and let's say the corresponding thing is f double prime. So then you get del x double prime, let's say mu del x prime alpha del x double prime nu del x prime beta eta mu nu is equal to f double prime eta. So this is a function of x prime now, eta alpha beta. Okay. But now you can use the chain rule, because you can write this as del x double prime mu del x let's say rho times del x rho del x prime alpha. Okay. Oh, sorry, I should do the other way around. Let's multiply both sides by del x prime alpha del x lambda times del x prime beta del x gamma, both sides, del x prime alpha del x lambda del x prime beta del x gamma, both sides we multiply. So then by the chain rule, this thing is just del x double prime mu del x lambda, and similarly this thing, right, this is a chain rule. It's just a chain rule. And then if you do the chain rule for this, then this would be del x double prime nu del x gamma eta mu nu, right? And this, you see, this is again the transformation from the first transformation that we wrote down, that is from x to x prime here. So that is f prime. So that is what we call f prime. So we can write this as f prime. So this is equal to f double prime of x prime, but then x prime is a function of x, so we can rewrite in terms of x, and then this is f prime of x times eta lambda nu. So now therefore we can call this as your new f. Let's call it f triple prime, which is a function of x eta lambda nu. So you see, now you have a transformation from x to x double prime, which is also a conformal transformation, where the factor is just a function of f prime into f double prime. Okay, so all three properties are satisfied. The identity is a conformal transformation, the inverse is a conformal transformation, and the composition of two conformal transformations is also a conformal transformation. Okay.
Sir, can you go to the invertibility case? The
Yeah.
equation we found. What is the meaning of the last equation? Can you repeat it?
Which equation?
The last equation in box.
So when you multiply this by this factor, you got this equation, right? So this means that if I had gone from x to x prime, I mean from x prime to x, then this is also a conformal transformation, but the factor of f is 1 by f. So so I had started with this transformation, right? This is from x to x prime. You see the top you have x prime, denominator you have x. Now if I had gone from x to x, the reverse, then I would have got x on top and x prime in the denominator. The question is that transformation also a conformal transformation? If this is a conformal transformation, is the inverse also a conformal transformation? That is the question. So what do? I just multiply it by the inverse, both sides. Okay, then I get this equation. Then I'll get this equation. Okay, this equation here, this becomes delta, and this becomes eta because of this two Kronecker deltas, and the f is here. So now if I have to compare with the conformal transformation equation, I have to take the f on the other side, and then it becomes 1 by f. So the inverse is also a conformal transformation, but for the f becomes 1 by f, right? So
Yes,
that
sir,
is also
okay.
a conformal transformation. And then we show that if you do two successive conformal transformations, that is also a conformal transformation, because the net result is another conformal transformation. So if I go from x to x prime and then x prime to x double prime, it is the same as going from x to x double prime with a new f, and that f is a product of the two initial f's. Okay. So therefore this forms a group as long as f of x is doesn't vanish somewhere and these matrices are invertible. So as long as these coordinate transformations are invertible, but that is what we are choosing. We're looking at coordinate transformations which are invertible coordinate transformations. So as long as that is true, this is possible. Okay. And what we this conformal, so this conformal group, let's call it conformal group. This this is a sub. So this is the Poincare group is a subgroup of this. Poincare means Lorentz plus a translation. Okay, so Lorentz plus, because in this case this is the same as this, but with f equal to 1. So it's a subset of transformations. Okay. The subset of transformations. So it's a bigger set of transformations than the Poincare transformations. And in terms of this angle that we defined, the conformal transformations, they preserve angle between curves. While the Poincare transformations, they preserve both. Preserve both angles between curves and the length of curves, because the length is also preserved under rotation or Lorentz transformation. So what length means in a Lorentz case, it means with the minus sign, the c squared dt squared minus sign, and for a Euclidean case, it's all plus sign. And by the way, here I have nowhere used that the spacetime dimension is 3 or 4. So this is true for any dimension, but I have to mention that when I say eta mu nu, I mean one time negative, one time positive, and all space negative. So this is what I mean by an eta mu nu. So this means that plus 1 and d minus 1 minus 1. This is my notation. This is my signature. Okay. So it is d plus 1 dimension. So if it's d-dimensional Minkowski space, it means there's one time and d minus 1 space, and for the space I will use minus 1, and for the time I will use plus 1 signature. So this I'll consistently use this. Okay. Now in field, when we do field theory, then also you see this thing that one class of, so this is you have got a set of transformations. One class of transformations which is very useful is what are called continuous transformations. Continuous transformations. So even when you do Lorentz transformations, there are these continuous transformations and discrete transformations. Both of them are Lorentz transformations, but the continuous transformations, by what do they mean? They mean those transformations which can be built from the by infinitesimal transformation, can be built from infinitesimal transformations. So one example of this is like when you do this rotation, for instance, rotation. So rotation, a discrete transformation is when you take all x to minus x, right? So this transformation is a discrete transformation. That means you cannot continuously take all vectors to minus of themselves, because the simple way to see it is that if you take all vectors to minus the vector of themselves, so that means that you're just taking z, y, x to this. This is z, this is x, and this is y, right? This is what x goes to minus x means. But you cannot do this continuously, because if you try to do this, you have to break one of these rods. There's no way you can continuously take this thing to this thing. So this is a discrete transformation, and in rotation you can see that the discrete transformations are those whose determinant is minus 1. Okay. So a continuous transformation is one which is built from infinitesimal transformations, meaning you can do small transformations and build it. So we are now going to look at continuous conformal transformations. Now this continuous transformations has many, why we look at it has many reasons. For instance, one reason is that there is Noether's theorem, which tells you that that for every continuous transformation there is a corresponding continuous symmetry, there is a corresponding Neutert charge. Then the other thing is that we will also be looking at for continuous transformations. There is also a there will be a, for instance, Lorentz group. There's also a Lorentz algebra, and all your fundamental particles are representations of that Lorentz algebra. So similarly, we will also have to find representations of the conformal algebra, and they will be the fundamental particles of this theory. So for all those reasons, continuous transformations are very important, and we will study them now. So what are continuous conformal transformations? Continuous conformal transformations are all finite transformations, all finite conformal transformations which can be built by successive infinitesimal conformal transformations. Means very by small conformal transformation, infinitesimal conformal transformations. So this is true for all. If you're doing a continuous Lorentz transformation, those are those Lorentz transformations which can be built by doing small Lorentz transformations, and the continuous rotations are those rotations which can be built by doing small rotations. So we will look at continuous conformal transformations, which are all finite conformal transformations which can be built by successive infinitesimal conformal transformations. Okay. So therefore, we have to first look at infinitesimal conformal transformations. So that means we're looking at transformations x prime mu as a function of x. Okay. But this is a finite transformation, but we are looking for infinitesimal version, meaning you're looking for x prime mu, which is x mu plus a small shift, and that small shift we call epsilon mu. But now this shift can be a function of x. It can be it's a small shift, but that small shift can depend on where you are. Okay. So now and then we will look for these transformations such that del x prime mu, the fundamental equation that we had, del x prime mu, del x alpha, del x prime mu, del x beta, eta mu nu should be some function f of x times eta alpha beta. Okay. So we want to use this equation here and then see what we get. And this is infinitesimal. So that means when we solve this equation, we will ignore all epsilon square terms. Only epsilon, linear order and epsilon we will choose. So from here, you can immediately see that del x prime mu, del x alpha must be given by delta mu alpha plus del alpha epsilon mu from here. Okay. So just plug it in and you get delta mu alpha plus del epsilon this thing times delta nu beta plus del beta epsilon nu times eta mu nu is equal to f of x times eta alpha beta. And now if you expand this, the first term will be eta alpha beta. So this is obtained by this times this times this. The second term is obtained by multiplying this and this times this. So that will give you delta alpha epsilon beta. The third term is obtained by multiplying this times this times this, and that will give you delta beta epsilon alpha. The fourth term we will ignore because that is epsilon squared. So this is given by f of x eta alpha beta. This is this equation at the infinitesimal level. And then you can write this as del epsilon alpha beta, del alpha epsilon beta plus del beta epsilon alpha equal to f minus 1 beta alpha beta. And this thing we call G. Remember, G is small. That is because epsilon is small. So G has to be small. So G is some small thing. We just call it G. And this equation is called the conformal Killing vector equation. In short, CKV equation. Because if this term was 0, this is actually the Killing vector equation. Okay. So this is the conformal Killing vector equation, and solutions to this equation, that means the epsilon solutions, those epsilon which satisfy this equation are called conformal Killing vectors. That means those infinitesimal transformation which, so conformal Killing vectors are those are the generators of those transformations which generate a conformal transformation. Okay, those the generators of those coordinate transformations which are conformal transformations. So those are called the conformal Killing vectors. A Killing vector is a generator of that transformation which is isometry, where the metric does not change. Well, here this generates transformations which changes the metric, but by a conformal factor, by local factor. Okay, a Killing vector is a generator which generates transformations which don't change the metric. That's isometry of the isometry. Well, here it's a conformal symmetry, meaning it changes the metric but by a factor, scale factor.
So when f equals to 1, then this is a symmetry
Yes.
of this metric.
This is a symmetry of this metric. Yes, exactly.
But sir, I have a question that last time we have generalized this to this any space time. I mean, where by replacing partial derivative with covariant derivative. Is it right? I mean, I have calculated this, but I got exactly the partial derivative, because there is nothing derivative type that acts on the metric. I mean,
No, you'll have to change the metric also, right? Because there's a G alpha beta also will be there. So the G alpha beta also will be G prime alpha beta X prime. So the G prime alpha beta X prime will also have to be expanded. So you'll get contributions from derivative of metric also in that case. So what I'm saying is that if you did that, you'll get the corresponding equation will be grad mu epsilon nu. So what was the equation here? So if you take del x prime mu, so let's this is the equation G alpha beta. So if you then you have to change here also, and from there you'll get derivatives of G also.
yeah, okay. At first of the class, I will say this actually. Okay. So what you'll have is here it will be like this: del x prime mu, del x alpha, del x prime nu, del x beta times G mu nu x prime is equal to f of x g. So there is prime here also. So that's what I'm saying. Okay. Actually, I think I should write prime here also, because a new metric is f times Han. This is the correct equation to it. Yeah, I am saying that.
Sir, why there is a prime? Why G prime? Because
you started from here, right? It was del x prime mu, del x prime nu, G prime mu nu. This is the thing. This is the thing, right? Right. So
eta does not depend on x. That's why there is eta mu. In case of eta, there is no prime.
No, eta is invariant, so eta does not change at all. Yeah.
Eta does not contain x or something.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I will never be. I'll not be on curved space. So I'll always be on flat space. So we will always look at this. Okay. Yeah. So now Next, what we did was we looked at this thing. So we looked at your. So now we looked at this equation. First for d equal to 2. We also do for d equal to 1, but that is not very interesting. So let's look at. So you will see that the solutions depend upon d. So there will be d equal to 2 and d greater than 2. You will see the solution structure of the solutions will be very different for d equal to 2 and d greater than 2. So let's look at first for d equal to 2. And let's look, so that means we take the metric to be eta mu nu is minus 1, 1. And then therefore there are three equations. First equation is when you take alpha beta to be 0, 0. Second equation is alpha beta to be 1, 1. And third equation is alpha beta to be 0, 1. 1, 0 case is the same as 0, 1 because it's a symmetric equation. So there are only three equations. So the first equation is sorry. So the first equation. Yeah. So one more thing before going there, we have to do one more thing. Yeah.
Your
So
metric notation previously, I think, is 1 plus then minus.
oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. So here, there's one more point here that we can now actually write down g in terms of epsilon, because if you contract with eta alpha beta, then you get from here del rho epsilon rho twice is equal to g of x times d. You get this equation. You just have to multiply this by eta alpha beta. So if you multiply this equation by eta alpha beta, then this will become d, and this become 2. Okay, so you'll get this equation, that this thing. So you can actually rewrite this equation. So you can actually rewrite this equation as del alpha epsilon beta plus del beta epsilon alpha is equal to 2 by d del rho epsilon rho eta alpha beta. Okay, now let's look at this equation for d equal to 2. So for d equal to 2, your first equation is del 0 epsilon 0 plus del 0 epsilon 0 equal to 2 by d. So now 2 by d is 1. So we just get 1 here. And this equation is del 0 epsilon 0 plus del 1 epsilon 1 times 1, because eta 0, 0 is 1. And this is equal to del 0. So since eta 0, 0 is 0, I can write this epsilon 0 down, while this would become minus, right? And from here you get the equation that, so this is 2 times epsilon 0, so 1 cancels and you get del 0 epsilon 0 plus del 1 epsilon 1 equal to 0. Okay, and if you do with 1, 1, you get the same equation. But now there's a minus 1 here. And if you do it, you will again get the same equation, that del 0 epsilon 0 plus del 1 epsilon 1 is 0. So both are the same equation. So this is one equation you get. The same equation. So it's the same equation. And now you look at the third equation. This was 0, 1. So you get del 0 epsilon 1 plus del 1 epsilon 0. And this is equal to 0 because eta 0, 1 is 0. So this is the second equation. So you get two equations. Okay. Now if you get two equations, now you can solve it in the following way. Just add and subtract. So let's call this 3 and let's call this 4. So 3 plus 4 will give del 0 epsilon 0 plus epsilon 1 plus del 1 epsilon 0 plus epsilon 1 equal to 0. And this means del 0 plus del 1 acting on epsilon 0 plus epsilon 1 equal to 0. And if you subtract, you can show that if you take 3 minus 4, then this will give you del 0 minus del 1 acting on epsilon 0 minus epsilon 1 is 0. So you can check that. So this is what you will get from here. Okay. Now, what does this mean? So this, since it is del 0 plus del 1, this kind of suggests that we should go to light-like coordinates or light cone coordinates. Light cone coordinates. So light cone coordinates will be x0 plus minus x1, and we will call this x plus and x minus. So these are the light cone coordinates. So instead of x1 and x0, you use x plus and x minus. Okay. Then you see, if this is x0 and x1, then I can call epsilon 0 plus minus epsilon 1 as epsilon plus minus. I can use light cone coordinates for all vectors. So epsilon is also a vector, so I'll use the light cone coordinates for that also. And if that is the case, then you can see the first equation, that is 3 plus 4. So this would become del 0 plus del 1 acting on, this was epsilon 0 plus epsilon 1, but if you take it upstairs, then you'll get epsilon 0 minus epsilon 1 equal to 0, and this object is epsilon minus, right? And if you use the chain rule, you can show that del x plus is equal to del x 0 del x 0 del x plus del x1 del x1 del x plus, and this and x0 is x plus plus x minus by 2, and x1 is x plus minus x minus by 2. So you'll get this is equal to just half del 0 plus del 1, right?
Can you
similarly for del
scroll
x,
like little bit back?
which one?
By doing 3 plus 4, how do you got that epsilon minus?
No, epsilon 0 plus epsilon 1.
No, it's by doing 3 plus 4, that is epsilon 0 plus epsilon 1.
Yeah.
So in bottom you have written that
No,
by,
that is so when you raise it, so this epsilon 0
oh,
epsilon
okay,
1
okay,
is
okay,
downstairs. When you raise it, then epsilon 1 becomes minus epsilon 1.
okay, okay.
Okay. So then actually what you will get from here, the two equations can be written as del x plus of epsilon minus is 0, and del x minus of epsilon plus is 0. And what that means is epsilon minus is only a function of x minus, and epsilon plus is only a function of x plus. Okay. So in light cone coordinates, what that means, if I do a transformation like this, that x prime plus is x plus plus any function of x plus, right, and x prime minus is x minus plus any other function of x minus, then this is a conformal, this is conformal transformation in 2D Minkowski space. Right. So the finite version of this is now simple, easy to understand, because this is only a function of x plus. If you do many finite version is if you do successive infinitional transformation, but each infinitional transformation is only a function of x plus. So the finite transformation, finite continuous transformation is just a function of x plus. Any function of x plus, any function, any thing which is of this type, this is a continuous conformal transformation in 2 dimensions. Okay, that means you scale the x plus, you choose x plus to any function of x plus, and you change x minus to any function of x minus. This is a continuous conformal transformation.
Sir, please repeat the last step where you write it in terms of x plus and x minus. This transformation equation.
Here.
Yes.
This one.
Yes. Yes.
So we see that this epsilon minus. So what I'm saying is that, okay, I see. So what did we have? We had x prime is x plus epsilon 1, right? And x0 prime is x0 plus epsilon 0. This is the transformation, right? This was the transformation because we wrote x prime mu as x mu plus epsilon mu. right? So if you write in 0 and 1, then this is a transformation, right? Now if I add it, then what you get? You get x0 prime plus x1 prime is equal to x0 plus x1 plus epsilon 0 plus epsilon 1, right? And similarly, if I subtract it, I'll get x0 prime minus x1 prime equal to x0 minus x1 plus epsilon 0 minus epsilon 1. But this thing is what we had called epsilon plus, and this is what we had called x plus, and therefore this is x prime plus. And this is x prime minus, this is x minus, and this is epsilon minus. So it's the same as this transformation, but in the light cone coordinates. So this transformation in the light cone coordinates is this: the x prime plus is x plus plus epsilon plus, and x prime minus is x minus plus epsilon minus. Okay, what that equation tells you is that this epsilon plus is only a function of x plus, meaning a general transformation will be a function of both x plus and x minus. Both of them will be a function of x plus and x minus, right? But if it's a conformal transformation, then it's only a function of x plus, and this is only a function of x minus. You understand? So a general transformation of this type here, this is a function of both x and x0. But what we saw is that if you want to solve that Killing vector equation, the conformal Killing vector equation, then the solution to that is that this epsilon plus is not a function of x minus, and this epsilon minus is not a function of x plus. So any transformation of this type, where this is only a function of x plus, only a function of x minus, this is a conformal transformation in 2 dimensions. Okay, and then I said that the finite version of this just means that x prime plus is any function of x plus, and x prime minus is any function of x minus. Is it okay?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Now we had discussed this last time, but as an exercise, take this as an exercise for you. We had done it. I think we had done it last time, so you don't have to submit it. But I'll just mention. We said that if we take in the Euclidean case, I won't do this now. It's in the Euclidean case. That means when your metric is +1, then instead of light cone coordinates, it's useful to use the complex coordinates. So if I write x plus iy as z and x minus iy as z bar, then we showed that the conformal transformation is any function, any holomorphic transformation. So this is the so in Euclidean case, this is the conformal transformation. So this is the Euclidean analog of this, and this is not difficult to understand because we know that you can go, since you've done I think one course of QFT, you have heard of this Wick rotation where you go time, you make time imaginary. So if you do that, then this becomes complex conjugate of each other. x0 plus x1 and x0 minus x1 become complex conjugate of each other, and then you get then you'll get what was this transformation. The corresponding thing in the this thing is just the this thing. And in fact, that the Killing vector equations in this case are just the Cauchy. So Killing vector equations, CKV equations, are just the Cauchy-Riemann equation. Are just Cauchy-Riemann equations. Okay, in this case, it's just the Cauchy-Riemann equation. Okay.
Sir, is it somehow coincidence or something subtle here? I mean, why CKV equation is Cauchy-Riemann equation in Euclidean's case?
No, it's not coincidence. It's not coincidence. I mean, I think when we did this complex analysis, we had mentioned that the under conformal transformations, the angles are preserved. So yeah, it's not coincidence. It is by definition. The conformal transformations are known to preserve angles, so they have to be Cauchy-Riemann equations.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So now and then we now go to the case where d is greater than 2. And now we will see something very different. So here you see this function, these transformations can be a very general class of transformation, because any function, only restriction is that function is only a function of x plus, and this is only a function of x minus. But it is a continuous. I mean, there are any infinite number of functions you can think of, right? F of x can be any function of f of x plus. But in d greater than 2, the situation is very different. So let's see what is the equation for d greater than 2. So there the equation, let's come back to the equation. And so now we'll do a bit of algebra. So let's say first, so now we have to find what is the general solution of epsilon. That's what we want to find. So let's first, so this is a general algebra. You'll find it in the textbooks that I've referred to you, but I'll nevertheless mention it. So first you multiply both sides by del mu del u, meaning do the differential both sides. What do you get? So if you do del mu del u both sides, you'll see you'll get box. There's the Laplace operator acting on del dot epsilon twice is equal to 2 by d box of del dot epsilon. Meaning if you do del mu here, then del mu will become box, and del nu epsilon nu will become del dot epsilon. And the same thing will happen here. And this will be del nu, because it's eta mu nu, it will become box. This box is the Laplace operator. This is just del 0 square minus del 1 square. That's what box means. Okay, so this is just del mu. This is what we are calling box. Okay, is it clear? If you multiply both sides with del mu, then you will get this equation. Because both these equations will become the same. Both these terms will become the same on the left hand side, and on the right hand side is just this object. But now you see, if d is not equal to 1, this means that 1 minus 1 by d times box of del dot epsilon is 0. So if d is not equal to 1, okay, then box of del dot is 0. Is this okay? What did we do? We just took del mu on both sides, and you get this equation.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. Now, second step, just take del mu on both sides. Del mu, only one of them. So you take del mu of del mu epsilon nu plus del nu epsilon mu equal to 2 by d del dot epsilon eta mu. Both sides you take del mu, and then you see what you get. So then you'll get one is box of epsilon nu plus del nu of del dot epsilon is equal to 2 by d del nu of del dot epsilon. Is it okay?
Yes.
Now again, you can take this term here, and then you'll get 1 minus 2 by d, or you yeah, so 2 by d minus 1, whatever, 1 minus 2 by d del nu del dot epsilon is equal to minus box epsilon. So this is a bit of tedious, a little bit of algebra, but is it okay? This thing, 1 minus 2 by d is minus of this thing, right?
So what
Now,
is this del epsilon, del dot epsilon?
Oh, del dot epsilon means del rho epsilon rho. Divergence. Del mu epsilon mu. Divergence. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now you take del mu of this equation. Again del mu. So what do you get? So you get 1 minus 2 by d. Take del mu. Okay. So if I take derivative, so this is del mu del dot epsilon. Del dot epsilon means del mu del rho epsilon rho equal to minus box del mu epsilon. Okay. Then symmetrize.
One del nu, right? You
Sorry?
have one. You have one on the outside and one in the inside as well.
So
You're
taking derivative, you get this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So taking derivative del mu, you'll get this. So once you do that, then symmetrize. Symmetrize with mu and nu. Meaning you add to this del mu, but with mu and nu interchanged. So just add del mu again, just symmetrize both sides. So what you get? So this will give you 1 minus 2 by d. Okay. Now this, if you symmetrize, this side is already symmetric because it's this thing. It's become 2 times del mu del dot epsilon. And if you do the other way around, then you'll get minus box del mu epsilon nu plus del nu epsilon. Symmetrize this. But this equation, this is already, we know what is this. This is the conformal Killing vector equation. The conformal Killing vector equation tells you that this object is just equal to 2 by d del rho epsilon rho eta mu nu. That's the conformal Killing vector equation. So you get 2 times 1 minus d by 2 times del mu del nu del dot epsilon is equal to minus box del rho epsilon rho times eta mu nu times 2 by d. Because this is just 2 by d del rho epsilon eta mu nu. So you just substitute with that. So it's minus 2 by d box of del rho epsilon. But remember, we got just now the equation that box of we got this equation that box of del dot epsilon is 0 if d is not equal to 1. So we are in d greater than 2. So the right hand side is 0. So we come to this equation that 1 minus 2 by d times del mu del nu del dot epsilon is 0. And if d is not equal to 2, then this term is non-vanishing. So that means this is 0. So this is where the difference comes between 2 and the higher dimensions. In 2 dimensions, this would have been this equation will not give any equation on del mu del nu, but in d greater than 2, this will tell you that this is 0. If we were in 2 dimensions, this equation is trivially satisfied. But in higher than 2 dimension, we get this equation del mu del nu del dot epsilon is 0.
What happens in one dimension?
In one dimension, even the first step is not correct. In first, so actually, in one dimension we had done it last time. In one dimension, any coordinate transformation is a conformal transformation. In one dimension, actually, even this is not true. In one dimension, this itself is identically 0. Okay, so in one dimension, there's no point using these equations, but you can do it, and we had done it last time. In one dimension, any epsilon of x is a conformal transformation. Any function is a conformal transformation. Any transformation, any function of x is a conformal transformation.
Okay.
The Killing vector equation is trivially satisfied, both sides. So for any epsilon, it is true. Okay, but you see now what happens if this equation means that del dot epsilon is linear in x because it's a quadratic equation, and this means that epsilon is quadratic, at most quadratic, in x. Yeah, because del mu del nu, so this del dot epsilon is linear, and if del dot epsilon is linear, and then epsilon itself must be at most quadratic, it can't be more than that. So epsilon is quadratic in x. But remember, in 2 dimension, epsilon could have been any function of x, but here it can be at most quadratic in x. And that is because this equation that we got, this equation is non-trivial in d greater than 2, but trivial in d equal to 2. So that is why we don't get any constraint from this in 2 dimension, but in higher dimension, we get a constraint that is quadratic in x. Okay. So I have to say that this this derivation I've just taken from the book, but there must be some simpler way to understand it or geometric way to understand these manipulations, but I have not been able to. So if any of you want to just look at it and see whether there's some nice geometric meaning to why this is the case, instead of doing this algebra, if there was some other nice way of understanding this. Because for instance, one thing which is very tantalizing is that this is a symmetric matrix. So it is saying that this matrix has only does not have a. If you look at if you consider this as a matrix, then the symmetric part of this matrix is only a trace. Okay, so maybe there is some way of showing coming to this result without doing all this algebra, or maybe there's a way to understand this algebra in a more intuitive way. But I have not found it in any book, the intuitive way. But there must be some geometric way of understanding this also, I think. So if you kind of do a literature survey and see whether you can, that will be nice actually. So normally the books don't have any other way. So in all books I have seen, it is like this algebra is given. But this is not, it's not, unless you know how to do this algebra, it's not clear, you will not be able to do these steps. So it will be nice if you can find out how to understand this from just from this equation and from some symmetry properties of this equation, and some properties of differential operators or something. If you can find out why they should be quadratic, then it will be a nice thing to do. So you can check whether you can find it in the literature. I mean, Google, you'll have this physics stack exchange and all that. Maybe you can even ask them there if there is some way of understanding why this quadratic. Because it is very puzzling to me that you have to do all this algebra, and it's not easy to, I mean, I keep forgetting this algebra. I have to constantly look back to the book to see what was this algebra. So there must be some simple way to do this. So yeah, so that's a problem if you want to try to do it. But anyway, so the epsilon is quadratic in x. So therefore, we can now write epsilon mu as follows. So it quadratic in x means it can be a constant. It can be linear, but linear will mean something like this. So let's write the lower version, the lower one. You can get the lower and the upper from just multiplying by eta. This is the linear part, and the quadratic part has to be of this form, right? And just from the symmetricity of this, we also know that c mu nu lambda has to be equal to c mu lambda nu. This is because x nu x lambda is multiplying it. Okay. Now each of this, so this A, B, and C are completely independent. So there's no constraint between them because one is linear, one is constant, one is linear, one is quadratic. So these are completely linear, completely independent ABCs. And we want to find out what is the restriction on A, B, and C. So this is not, so this equation we have to now substitute in the original equation, which is the Killing vector equation, conformal Killing vector equation. Because remember, we got this equation after doing a lot of algebra. So we have to see whether by taking derivatives and all that, right? So we have to see whether this equation substituted into the initial equation, which is this one, whether it's for what values of A, B, C it satisfies. Okay. But for that purpose, we can actually we can choose this separately. So for instance, we can independently put B mu nu to 0, C mu nu lambda to 0, and only work with A mu. And then we can put A mu to 0, B mu nu to non-zero, and C to 0. Or you can put A to 0, B to 0, and C not 0. And then we can check separately what are the constraints. Why is it that this is allowed, or why this is why is this okay? Because they have different orders in X. Okay. So since there are different orders in X, and the Killing vector equation is a linear equation, the orders will not get mixed. And that is why you can do separate, you can do it individually for A, B, and C. Okay. So what we will do is we will first put B and C to 0, and let's put epsilon equal to B, equal to A, epsilon equal to A. If you put epsilon equal to A, then you see automatically it is satisfied for all A, because this is just derivative. So there is no restriction on A. Okay, there's no restriction on A. So if I put B and C to 0, then what is the transformation? The transformation is x prime mu is x mu plus A mu. And this we know what is this. The finite version of this is just this is just translation. And we know the translation, we already know that translation is a conformal transformation. So this is okay. Finite version is a conformal translation. Now let's put A and C to 0 and let's take B mu nu and see what kind of restriction we get. So we take epsilon mu to be B mu nu x nu and substitute in the conformal killing vector equation. So that was del mu epsilon nu plus del nu epsilon mu equal to 2 by d del rho epsilon rho eta mu nu. Just substitute epsilon to be B mu nu x nu and then see what you get. So this del rho epsilon rho, so we can write this as B mu B mu lambda x lambda, B rho lambda x lambda, because you can raise and lower indices times eta mu. Okay, this is the equation. Now just take the derivative. So you'll get this equation will give you B nu mu. Second equation will give you B mu nu. And this third equation is okay. B mu x lambda is delta lambda mu, so that becomes B nu mu, and this becomes B mu nu, and this is 2 by d eta mu nu times. If I do this, you will get B rho lambda times eta rho lambda. Right. So you can write this thing as 2 by d eta mu nu times B rho rho. Okay. What does this mean? This means that this B mu nu matrix can be written as this part. It can be written as an antisymmetric matrix plus symmetric matrix. Right? Anything can be written as antisymmetric matrix and symmetric matrix. Whereas this part is just B mu nu minus B nu mu by 2, and this part is B mu nu plus B nu mu by 2. Right? Any matrix can be written like this. This equation tells us that there is no constraint on the antisymmetric part, but the symmetric part is a pure trace, meaning it is just eta proportional to eta mu nu. So that means that the B mu nu matrix has to be of this form. The B mu nu matrix has to be, so this B mu nu, this we will write as M mu nu. So M mu nu is the antisymmetric part, or omega mu nu actually. We will write it as omega mu nu. This is the antisymmetric part. So omega mu nu is the antisymmetric part. So we write this as omega mu nu, and there is no restriction on omega mu nu plus eta mu nu times some constant which we'll call B. What is B? B is this whole thing, that this whole thing 2 by d by B rho rho. This whole thing we'll call B. Actually 1 by d, because this B mu nu symmetric part is by 2. So the B is just okay. Is it okay? And omega and B, omega mu nu and B are independent. So there is no constraint on B and there is no constraint omega mu nu.
Sir, B equal to 1 by D or 2 by D? There was the 2.
No, because the symmetric part was B mu nu by B plus B nu mu by 2. So you divide by 2.
Okay.
So because you have written B mu nu as the antisymmetric plus symmetric, but the symmetric is B mu nu plus B nu mu by 2. So that is why it is 1 by D. Okay. So in this case, what is epsilon mu? Epsilon mu is omega mu nu x nu plus x mu times B. Right? Because just multiply epsilon mu is B mu nu times x nu. So it goes like this. Right? Now this transformation corresponds to Lorentz transformations. Because you know that Lorentz transformation, this antisymmetric transformation is the Lorentz transformation, And this transformation, what does that correspond to? So let's look at that. So let's put omega to 0, and let's do you understand what I'm saying? So if B is 0, then epsilon mu is omega mu nu x nu. But we know what is this transformation? Antisymmetric matrix time x. This is the Lorentz transformation. Okay. And if you put if omega mu nu is 0, then you have epsilon mu is equal to bx mu. Now, what is this transformation? Well, this transformation is nothing but the constant scaling, because x prime mu is x mu plus b times x mu, right? If you choose this, but that is 1 plus b times x mu, and this is lambda, right? So this corresponds to constant scaling that we had seen earlier, constant scaling. Okay. So till now we have seen that epsilon mu can be a mu plus omega mu nu x nu plus some constant b times x mu. So all these things, now we have to see what is the constraint on this x nu x lambda. Okay, so I'll stop here, so since so now you have to decide. I think I'll be able to take the class again from 7 o'clock today, but it's up to you. Is it okay? 7 o'clock?
Yes.
স্যার অ্যাকচুয়ালি নেট আছে এই শনিবার, তো আজকে
আচ্ছা।
না নিলে ভালো হতো আর কি।
Now, how many people are?
সরি, নেট না গেট।
If there are just a couple of people, then we can take the lecture and it can be recorded. So it's up to you. So
Because of appearing for the exam.
So all of you wanted to stop here today?
Yes, sir.
Achha, anyway, you decide among yourselves. So then we can. So, but in any case, from next time onwards, there was some discussion that since some of you have to go for from 4:30 to 5, you have to go for your tiffin or whatever. So it's better that from next time we start from 5. Is it okay with everybody? Instead of 3 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes, sir, that's okay.
Okay, so then we can from next time, which is next time means today is what? Today, so that means so our class is on Tuesday and Thursday, so we can start from 5. This thing. Okay, and one more thing that since this class is because we have to finish in 3 months kind of thing, there's a suggestion. But if it's too much for you, then you can tell me no. Let me know. I was thinking if we can have from 5 to 6:30, and then from 7 to 8:30. But if it's too long, then leave it. I can take a break for half an hour and take 5 to 6:30, 7 to 8:30, or
3 hours a bit
too much. Okay, so then I'll just take from 5 to 7.
7:30. That's fine, but 3 hours.
Okay. Okay. So then from next week we'll start from 5 o'clock. Is that okay? 5 o'clock.
স্যার অলসো অন স্যাটারডেজ?
Yeah, Saturdays. So that if you want, we can take Saturdays. But yeah, so it's up to you. So if it's okay with you, then I'll take a Saturday also afternoon, or maybe Saturday also 5 o'clock. No, not this Saturday because you have gap, but from the next Saturday we can.
আপনি মানে একটা উইক করে গ্যাপ দিয়ে স্যাটারডে নিতে পারেন।
Acha, by the way, there's one of you here, Shivam. He's also taking the course, and I don't think he understands Bengali, so maybe we should speak in English.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so
you can take this one week gap. Yeah.
1 week. Okay. So every alternate Saturday we can take an extra class. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay then. So today we'll just stop here because I have to go to a doctor's place, so I'll not be able to take from 5 o'clock. So from next week we will start from 5 o'clock. So any questions you have?
This 3-month thing, is it already fixed or there is?
No, 3 months. It's not fixed. Meaning, I think up to mid you can go. But the thing is that I think in May, I think you'll have to take two labs or something per day or something like that. So then it will be too much for you also.
Yeah.
But if it is not, I have no problem. I can continue till May end also. I have no problem. But
at the first place, for the first time, if we take the pressure, then at the end of this we can make it free actually.
Actually, after May, mid-May, the end of the course, I think the exam will be on June or something, end June.
Yeah, exam has to be finished before June 20th or something like that.
Actually, when we are taking this after in May, you can take classes once in a week. Once in a week.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, we can decide that. Yeah, there is
Yeah.
time to decide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any
Okay.
questions about today's class or something?
So the exercise you gave about the Euclidean case, do you have to submit it?
No, because I have already done it in the last.
Yes.
this thing. So you don't have to submit it. Yeah. Okay then. So we will meet on Tuesday.